I used to believe that metabolic rates, the resting metabolic rates for most people are roughly the same. If you say, hey, look, this person is 185 pounds. For a person with a similar body composition, they're going to be roughly the same resting metabolic rate. I don't really believe that anymore. If we look at variances in research, it can be upwards of about 500 calories.
Oh, interesting.
Now that's at the extreme ends of these types of things. But it can certainly be significant in a person's journey, because if you're somebody that can get in 1,800 calories and maintain your body weight, and somebody else can get in 2,300 calories and maintain their body weight, I mean, they can have 2 more Snickers bars per day than you could have.
Yeah.
And you might be blaming yourself. Oh, what am I doing wrong that is causing this to be a problem? And I think that that's very important to understand. The other thing that I think is very important to understand that was not a misconception of mine, but goes along with this, is a little bit of a segue, is that people who lose significant amounts of weight, there are predictive equations where we can say, hey, for a 150-pound person, your resting metabolic rate is going to be roughly this. And you know as well as I know that those are estimations at best, right?
Yep.
Well, when we look at somebody that has gone from 200 pounds down to 150 pounds versus somebody that's always been 150 pounds, one of the things that we found through Kevin Hall's research out of the NIH is that there are massively different potentials for hunger cues. And so just like the fact that you could have a large variance in resting metabolic rate, you could have a very large variance in how you experience hunger.
Makes total sense.
And so the numbers, it's kind of deflating. The number is, for every kilogram of weight lost, you could have a drive for 100 extra calories of food per day.
So for every 2.2 pounds, you have an extra 100 calories of hunger.
Upwards.
Okay.
Upwards. So it doesn't have to be there, but it can be up to there.
That's wild. If you take 20 pounds, 50 pounds,
it's huge.
It's massive.
It's almost like another person.
Yeah.
And so I want to point this out because differences in things like resting metabolic rate, differences in things like hunger cues, these can really affect people. And this is one of the reasons why people that have had large amounts of weight to lose see the recidivism rates that they do. This is why they are challenged on the way down. This is why they rebound a lot of the time. And the biggest downside to this is these people will likely look at this and they'll say, well, Deborah from the cul-de-sac doesn't have any problem staying 150 pounds. Why is it so hard for me? And traditionally, as in the fitness industry, one of the biggest issues that we've had is that we've said, oh, well, it's about commitment. It's about willpower. And I don't want to pretend that it's not partly about willpower. There's always willpower in play. And what was weird was in the 90s and early 2000s, we were always talking about, oh, it's willpower. You just need to commit and then it'll be fine. That's the bullshit, first off. Then we had this switch because we're very polarized, right? We talked about being black and white even before the show, where people get these ideas where it's either one or the other and there's almost no nuance in between. And so then it became, well, willpower doesn't really have anything to do with this. You're a victim of a lot of your situations. Yes, you are, but willpower certainly has a part to do with this. Here's how you blend the two, and here's how people can understand this to actually put it to work for them. So we know that RMR can shift. We know that hunger cues can shift. So if we know that these two things are happening, then we can set up habits and routines to allow us to use less willpower. You both have the same 100% charge on that willpower battery. Deborah from the cul-de-sac is using 15% per day. You're raw dogging it, and you're trying to use 95% per day because you're experiencing all these hunger cues. You're both 150 pounds now. You're both fighting against it, but she's fighting a lot less. So is willpower involved? Yes. She's using a lot less. So it is easier for her. So you do have more challenges than another person has. This is where those habits and routines come into play that can be very, very helpful. And there's a variety and they change depending on the person and what works for each person. You find the combination that works. And, you use things like adjusting the food environment. You use things like coming up with substitutions for different foods that may be trigger foods for your life. You use things like making a food diary and identifying your triggers in your daily life so you can either avoid them or shift the way that you react to them. When we talk about things like the environment and shifting the environment, if every time you come home, you know that there's that package of Oreos in your house and you reach for Oreos every time, well, maybe Deborah from the cul-de-sac doesn't keep those Oreos in her house. So you get it out. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't have Oreos, because we don't want to create that dichotomy of good foods and bad foods. But if it's possible for you, you don't have kids that are constantly saying, we have to have Oreos in the house. If you've got an ability to do this, consider getting it out of the house. Make this your choice. It has to be your choice. But look at it this way. If I get this out of my house, it's not that I can't have Oreos. It's that I'm creating a barrier to this action. So if I get home and I want Oreos, well, now I have to go to the store. 99% of the time, you're going to say, fuck that. I don't want to go to the store. It's too much of a pain in the ass. Wonderful. You have just shown to yourself that this is not as important to you as you thought. You're taking control over the situation. Substitutions can work in the same way. You find these foods, these actions that you don't think support who you are or what you're trying to become. Okay, change the response. There are 3 parts and anatomies to a habit. There's the reminder, the routine, and the reward. The reminder is what causes the trigger to cause you to do something. The routine is the action that you take based on that reminder, and the reward is whatever you get out of it. Maybe we're talking about the same example. Somebody gets home from work. Their reminder is that they're home from work. I'm going to go to my pantry. I'm going to grab that Oreo. Okay, well, you've got kids. You were not able to get that out of your house. You got to do the next best thing. Change that routine, that second R. That's what you can typically change when you're kind of hamstrung in other areas, like you cannot change that environment. So instead of grabbing the Oreos, you say, okay, well, maybe I'm going to grab non-fat Greek yogurt with fruit. Maybe I'm going to grab an apple. Maybe I'm going to grab a protein shake because I need a little bit of chocolate. But maybe that's a little bit better from a calorie perspective. Maybe it gives you a little bit more nutrients that are supportive of what you're trying to become. Or maybe you choose a productive activity. So you can either choose a productive food that's going to back this up or a productive activity, as long as these things are easy for you to accomplish and readily accomplishable. And that could be, maybe you go and you do laundry. Doesn't have to be something that you love, but if it cuts out stress later, it's going to be beneficial. Maybe you play video games. Maybe you read a book. Maybe you play with your dog. All of these things can help. And so if you start to institute these changes over time, whether it is adjusting the food environment, which could even include throwing it into the back of the freezer, because if it makes you wait 20 minutes because it's going to break your tooth if you eat it early, that gives you time to take control over your emotions and make the right choice for you. Or you do these substitutions, the differences in the way that you react to these situations build over time. And then eventually you get on autopilot. And then once you're on autopilot, you're draining that battery less. Deborah's going to 15%. Now, instead of going to 95%, you're going to 65% because you're starting to make some of these changes. And it's not that you were a bad person. It's not that you had these issues. It's not that you are inherently somebody that eats Oreos. It's that you were born in a situation and you grew up in a situation where this is how you were taught to deal with things. And so by learning some of these alternatives, you can change things up. And people feel like this is something that can't be overcome, but I want to essentially teach people that this is a possible thing, and the research backs this up. If you look at a twin cohort by Hurl and colleagues in 2018, they looked at twins. Genetics were identical to see how we respond emotionally to cravings and stress as far as food goes. What they found was that nearly all of the response to stress and cravings was environmentally based. Mm-hmm. It's a learned activity. That means you're not doomed by your genetics, which also means these strategies for using that reminder, routine, and the reward can unlearn an unproductive activity and relearn something that's productive. And that's awesome to know because you're not doomed. It's going to be really hard in the beginning. And that's okay. If you go into this knowing, hey, this is going to take concerted effort, that's okay. You're setting yourself up for proper expectations. And then realizing that this takes a little bit of time can give you some grace to put these forward. I mean, even in the research, when we look at habit formation, it takes 18 to 254 days to establish 95% of a proper habit. And I want to bring that up because we'll always hear 30 days, 30 days to make a habit or 90 days to make a habit or whatever it is. Could be a lot longer. Just because it's taking longer doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. It means you're a normal human. You're not a robot. You're facing life as it comes. And even in that research where they saw it took 254 days to form these habits, having a situation where you were thrown off, a challenge, hey, I had the Oreo in a way that I didn't want to necessarily have it. If it's a conscious choice, ignore this conversation. That's fine. Conscious choices are great. As long as it's a conscious choice and you understand the outcomes to that, it could be up a pound tomorrow. It's mostly water weight. It's okay. It's a good relationship with food. If this feels like it was an out of control situation, it wasn't a conscious choice, that's a blip on the radar. The research shows as long as you get back on track at your next chance, you're going to be completely fine. It does not halt that habit formation process. So this is a kind of a long, circuitous way to get to you have the ability to take control. Science backs you up. You just need to know the strategies to be able to get there. And sometimes it's a little bit different than what you thought. It might take a little bit longer than you thought. Understanding the anatomy of a habit can help you out here. But these different types of things can give you the power to take control. And that's what it's really all about. Relationships with food, relationships with how you view yourself, control, autonomy is a very big part of that. So let's empower people to have as much autonomy as possible.